about that, some documents. Okay, some of the documents that you have there in your file, it's going to be like a transcript, a question and answer interview like you had for the memos. It might be a letter, it might be a contract. Whatever documents provide the facts for the interpretation you're going to give are going to be there in the file. It's a variety of different documents. Sometimes there's legislative history, statutes, all kinds of different things. Cases from your jurisdiction. The jurisdiction for every MPT is the state of Franklin. Where is the state of Franklin?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't exist, right? So if you have cases from the state of Franklin, they're mandatory authority. But if you have cases from other real world states, then they're only persuasive. Okay, so you've got to pay attention to what you're looking at. And now I'm talking about, now I'm talking about the library instead of the file. And I've completely confused you, and it's totally my fault. Forget about legislative history and cases, we'll talk about that in a second. Memos, transcripts, letters, contracts, wills, the documents you're supposed to interpret. If you get instructions about the format, like over my signature or include subheadings, make sure you've got those in there because they are word points. Okay, the library. Primary and secondary authorities is what I was talking about. Cases from your jurisdiction, cases from other jurisdictions, statute from your jurisdiction, legislative history from your jurisdiction. Can you use legislative history? How about comments to the UCC? Can you use those? Don't you know the answer to that question?
Okay.
Yes, you can. Are they mandatory or persuasive? Persuasive. They're just persuasive, but you can use them, and you should, because they tell you how to interpret the statutes, part of the legislative history. Sometimes, mostly the authorities are going to be relevant. I guess sometimes they throw some irrelevant ones in there. A word about the cases. Oftentimes you will have one case that in turn cites another case, or maybe two other cases, or maybe three other cases. So let's say you have a case, and it cites and describes, explains really, a couple of other cases. How many cases do you really have to work with? Three. Any case that is cited by one of the cases they gave you is fair game, and you should see what the court has to say about it. You can use that case to build your argument. All right, so pay attention to the cases that your case cites. It's not just going to be a citation, it's going to be a description of what happened in that case. It's like a case within a case. So be aware of that, because you can use those when they come up, and you're supposed to. Because we are in the theoretical state, the hypothetical state of Franklin, the law could be completely made up. It may be totally different from the law of whatever state you learned in law school, or federal law, or law any place in the world. Sometimes they just make it up. Usually they draw it from a jurisdiction and they change the name to Franklin, but sometimes it's just completely bizarre and different from what you learned. That's okay, because you will base your analysis on the law that they gave you and not whatever it is you think you learned in law school. Okay, you see how easy this is? You don't have to know anything about the law to do well on this, because they tell you what the law is. You just have to be able to, synthesize it and write about it and do the things that we talked about in this class. Okay. Already talked about that. Can you handle a select number of authorities in the context of a factual problem involving a client? Do you respond to the instructions? Can you follow instructions? What is the law? Anyway. Here you are in the second semester, halfway through the second semester of law school. What is the law?
It's what you convince a judge it is based on.
Oh, that's so cynical. What is the law in a more theoretical sense? Oh, come on, you're in law school. What are you studying here? Rules that govern society, right? It's a very complicated set of rules that governs the entire society. So a big part of being a lawyer is being able to follow rules. And that's one of the things that they're testing here. And it's not just the law rules, but it's the specific rules that apply to a particular case or to a particular NPT, right? If they ask for a memo, don't give them a letter. If they ask for a letter, don't give them a memo. They want to see that you can follow instructions from the boss, because being a lawyer really is how well can you follow the rules. Content, thoroughness, organization of your response, all the things that you've been graded on in LARW and on your exams since you started law school, right? You're going to use PREACT to formulate your discussion. really the same thing that you've been doing. You're going to leave out parts of the memo. You're going to leave out the question presented, the short answer, and the statement of facts. Unless it asks you for a statement of facts, and I've never seen one of those. Usually the instructions say don't write a statement of facts. They don't want you to regurgitate the facts. They want you to analyze the law and apply it to the facts. So, what you're writing, you're going to write is going to be a discussion section of the memo. Okay? So however many pre-acts it takes to analyze the issue or issues is what you're going to write. If it's more than one issue and more than one pre-act, then you'll have an umbrella at the end. Right, that sets out the general rule and gives a roadmap for the issues that are going to follow. For each of those issues, you'll write a pre-act, just like you did on Memo 2, that would be the best example of that. Sound like fun? The good thing is that the herding stops after 75 minutes, right? Because you're done. You don't have to agonize for weeks about it. Okay, now we get to the process. This is the slide that I thought came earlier, but here it is. Okay, number 1. You read that assigning memo very carefully, figure out what it is you're supposed to do, what kind of document you're supposed to write, and then here's the kicker. This is probably the most important part. Write a task statement that says exactly what you're supposed to do. Handwrite it on your paper so that you can stay focused throughout the process on what you're supposed to do. Because you're going to be in a rush. 75 minutes, you're going to be in a rush to get this done, and you don't want to leave out important parts or lose focus of the question that you're supposed to be answering. So you write this task statement right there on the assigning memo in your own words that says what I'm supposed to be doing. I am supposed to write an objective memo that's broken into 3 parts, 1 part per element, and has major headings for each element, or whatever the instructions tell you to do. All right? And put that on the first page so you can look at it and remember over the course of the analysis and writing what it is you're supposed to do. You'd be amazed at how easy it is to lose track of focus of what it is you're supposed to be doing. Okay, this is different from the handout that I gave you, because in the handout it says don't look at the facts, read the assigning memo, and then go directly to the library. You know, that's not really how I do it. So I've added this for the slideshow. Skim through the documents that make up the facts, the rest of the file. Don't underline or highlight or anything. Just skim through so you can get the gist of what's in there. You want to read it very quickly because you don't have time to dwell on it now. You're going to come back to it later. But I find it helpful to have some idea of what the facts of the case are before I plow into the law. And if you think about it, how did you handle Memo 3? Did you read the assigning memo and then start doing research right then? Or did you read the assigning memo and then the interview and look at the contract and read the demand letter and then go start your research? Right? Does it really make sense to skip all the factual documents and go start your research right away? Yeah, I don't think so, because how do you know what you're looking for? It's kind of a chicken and egg problem, though, right? You can't do a good job at the research until you look at the facts, but you don't know what facts are important until you've done the research. But I'm going to say, just go ahead and skim through the facts so you have some idea of what's there. Then, go to the library. And you're going to study the documents that you've got there. You want to go through the library just one time if you can. You don't have time to go back through it 2, 3, 4 times. So as you're going through, you're going to make annotations. That's highlighting, marginal notes, circling things that are important, noting the date and the jurisdiction of cases if that's significant for some reason. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's always a good thing to make a note of, and you can figure out if it's important later. As you're going through extracting the rules, figure out what the rule is. If you're going to have to synthesize a rule between multiple cases, figure out how that's going to start looking, right? Start writing your synthesized rule on your notes page, because you only want to go through these cases and statutes and whatever else you've got one time if possible. Talk more about that process in a little bit more detail in a minute. So you go through the library, you've got the rules and principles that solve the client's problem. Now you're going to go back to the file, to the factual documents, and now you're going to slow down a little bit and go through quickly, but you're going to make notes now and figure out how does the rule I have to apply relate to the facts that I've got. All right? Now, I'm going to show you the tool that I use to get that done. Some of you, I think, have already seen this from other professors, but I came up with it, so this is Murphy's Law. Here's what I do. Anytime I'm trying to match up facts with rule, I'll put the rule on one side of my page, draw a line down the middle, I've got the facts over here. So let's say as I'm going through the library, I figure out that I've got a 3-element test, and the elements are 1, whatever that is, 2, whatever that is, and 3, whatever that is. So I'm writing out the elements of the rule. Okay? Easy. Making a note to yourself. Then when you come back through the facts, what you're going to do is figure out what facts correspond to that part of the rule and write those facts down. What facts correspond to this part of the rule and write those facts down, and so on. Keeping in mind that the facts probably are not organized this way. Like you're going to find this one first and write it down here, then you'll find this one and write it up here, then find something right there, right? Because you're pulling facts out of different documents and they're going to come all as a jumble, just like the facts in the interview from MO 3.2. It was not linear at all, it was all just stuff. Why is this helpful? Because once you've got this done, and it's time to start writing your answer, you've already got the structure, the outline of your analysis right there. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to write a conclusion, because that's what comes at the beginning of pre-act, whatever your prediction is. And maybe you don't know what the prediction is yet. I'll tell you something else about that in a minute, but let's say you do. You write that. The next thing you're going to do is write the rule. Yes? Well, here's your rule. You just go down. To determine the answer to this question, the courts apply a 3-element test. The elements are 1, 2, 3. Paragraph. With regard to the first element, the relevant facts are da 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 da. Whatever the answer is to that first element. Paragraph. With regard to the second element, the relevant facts are da 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 da. Draw analogies to the cases if that's what you need to do. You see how you've already got the structure, the outline for your analysis. If you write this stuff down this way, you've already broken the facts out so that they correspond to the relevant parts of the rule. This really works. It's a huge time saver. It gives you a built-in structure, so you don't even have to think about how you're going to organize this stuff when you start writing the pre-act. It's right there. But if you've got 2 issues, hopefully you're going to have 2 charts like this, one for the first issue, one for the second issue. What this does, though, is it allows you to match the facts up with the relevant part of the rule as you're going through the facts. And that way when it's time to start writing, all you have to do is essentially go down this list, put the facts with the right element, and you're done. Does this make sense? It's really helpful. All right, I said a minute ago that the first thing you're going to write is the conclusion, because that's the first C in pre-act, right? Let me ask you this question. On the exams that you took in your doctrinal classes last semester, you probably used IRAC instead of pre-act. Why? Yeah, why did the professor tell you to? This is the professor that haven't actually thought about it. I wonder why. I think I know the answer why. That's because all of your professors, we went to law school back in the day when we had to handwrite the answers to all of our questions in paper books, not the electronic book. And if you're doing that, and the first thing you're going to put in is the conclusion, that supposes that you know what the answer is before you've written your essay. But have you had this experience in law school where you don't know what the answer is until you get to the end, and then you write the conclusion at the end? And that's why we do IRAC, is because you can state the issue. You know what the issue is at the outset. And you can do the rule application, and then finally when you get to the end and you've gone through this writing process, then you know what the conclusion is and you can write the conclusion. Okay, now we're on the MPT. It's like an exam, right? It's time pressure. What if you don't know what the answer is? The clock says you have to start writing now if you're going to get done, but you're not sure what the answer is yet. It's okay, because you're probably typing your answer. Leave a little blank space there where the conclusion is going to be. Write the rule, explanation, application, conclusion. Copy the conclusion from the end and paste it back up there where the first conclusion should go. That's a little bit inartful. I wouldn't do it that way if I had all the time in the world, but it's better to have the pre-act structure and have the conclusion in both places than it is to worry about elegant variation and you don't want to have the identical. That's okay. For a timed writing exercise, take that conclusion from the bottom and paste it up to the top. That works, and I won't ding you for it, and neither will the bar examiners. Making sense. Yes?
In the MPT, is it important to do a counter argument in your analysis, or just you literally react to?
So the answer is it depends, but really, if the question you're asking is where in here does the counter argument go, the counter argument is always part of the application.
Okay.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that yes, you need to have counter argument in your pre-app. Always. Especially if there's an objective memo. You got to tell the boss what the other side is going to say. Questions so far? Okay, you're going to get to practice. I'm going to upload some more practice MVTs to the website so you have plenty of opportunities to practice. So consider how the law applies to the client facts. That's essentially what you're doing here. Outline your answer. Hey, we've already got that done. Write the response required by your supervisor. Boom. You're finished. Go back and check your work. Do not leave the MPT before the clock runs out. Use every minute that you got. If you finish like 15 minutes early, you probably missed something. You go back and figure out what the issue is. It should take you every minute to get done. Anytime you have left over, you avoid proofread through your document. Strategies. Pinpoint your task. Let's scrap the task statement. Skim the file facts. Study the library. Detailed review of file. How does it apply? Outline the answer. Write the response. Those are all the steps right there. You're going to be asked to do something you don't know how to do. Well, you know how to write a memo, but it's going to be in some area of law that you have not studied, and that's okay. Because what are we testing here? Is it your knowledge of the law? It's your knowledge of the process. Have you mastered the process? Can you read the law and apply it to the facts and write it in a way that's going to make sense? That's what we're really testing here. And yeah, nobody else in the class knows either, so you're all starting at the same blank page. Time's going to be rushed. You want to skim, read for the gist. The thing you really want to study is the assignment memo, because you want to make sure you don't miss any special instructions from there. But everything else you're going to be skimming. Taking notes versus outlining as you go. I actually do both. So when I'm reading through the law, I'm circling, highlighting, annotating, and I'm writing the stuff down on another piece of paper so that I don't have to go back through the law again to make this list of elements or factors or whatever it's going to be. Writing out the answer is especially time consuming. And the question that you've got to ask yourself now at this stage is, how much time am I going to give for planning and how much time am I going to give for actually writing out the answer? The answer is, it depends on you. It depends on how quickly you can type, right? If you're a super fast typist, then you can leave less time for the writing and more time for the planning and analyzing and the reading part, right? If you're a slow reader, then you need to give yourself more time for the reading part and less time for the typing part. On the other hand, if you're like me and you're a very painfully slow typist, you got to give yourself more time on the typing end and less time on the studying end. It all depends on you, and that's why you're going to work through some sample MPT problems between now and the time you do one in this class, so that you get a feel for how you should allocate your time. It's different for every person. As a general rule of thumb, I would say, who knows, 2/3 for analyzing and 1/3 for writing. But that's going to shift depending on how quickly you type and how quickly you read.
If something like this, the spelling and punctuation, all that kind of against you.
The electronic blue book, does that have spell check in it now? No, it still doesn't. It's going to drive you greater crazy, but they won't really count it against you. Sentence structure, yes, right? If the sentences don't make any sense and the punctuation is just completely random or wrong, then they're probably going to count that against you and lose some style points there. But misspelled words, then they know that you're doing this under time pressure and that you don't have spell check. So we'll take that into account. But you want sentences that actually make sense. Yes?
Are we going to be actually citing cases, or do we just reference them without citing?
Oh, that is a great question. So, like, referencing without citing would be, you mention the case name and its actual sentence. In the Smith v. Jones case, da 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 da. And then you have to have a citation after that. If you're going to put a citation, I would say the answer is no. But what if you're saying the law in Franklin is, and then you're going to cite a statute? How would you actually do that? You're going to use a shorthand citation format, which is simply bracket Smith, if it's the Smith case. Or if it's section 742 of the Franklin Code, you're just gonna put section 742. And that's all it takes, right? You're not gonna write blue book citations because you don't have time.
That's the end of the sentence?
At the end of the sentence, yeah. Wherever you would put a citation. So I mean, it could be a citation clause that's gonna be in the middle of the sentence, but probably it's gonna be at the end of the sentence. And if you think you don't have time to do that, don't do that. Don't do it at all. If you think you're really gonna be pressed for time, that's something that you can go back and add later. It only takes you a couple of seconds while you're typing the sentence to add this. I would do it if you have time, but that's the kind of thing that, you know, whether the grader is gonna deduct any points is kind of an unknown question. It's not a for sure thing you're gonna lose points, so I would leave it off if you're worried about not having enough time. Go back and add it if you do have enough time. It's not as bad as it sounds, really, it's not. It's kind of fun, and like I said, the herding stops after 75 minutes, right? You get it done, finished. So let's look at the one that we've got, this Melee versus BBI. This is the one that's going to do between now and next Thursday, but we're going to take a look at it now. Just walk through the parts and see what we've got here. What I want you to do now is read that assignee memo and write a task statement. Do we have any of those left over, Mr. Foreman?
Of the NPT?
Of the NPT, yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So even as you're going through this assignee memo, you should be underlining, highlighting, pull out the important stuff. And it's not just instructions, it really sets the backdrop for the problem. Okay, how many people have finished their task statement? All right, keep working. Once you actually write it out, and then we'll compare them. See what you wrote. Okay, I really strongly advise you to write your task statement on the assignee memo itself, in handwriting, so that it does not scroll off the screen. After you start typing your answer, right, the stuff that you typed first is going to be gone, and you might forget to take it out of your answer later. If you handwrite it on that front page, then you're going to remember it. volunteer, share your task statement with us. Volunteer, volunteer. Oh, okay, tell us.
So I wrote, write an office memo evaluating the merits of Maley's claim that BVI negligently booked him into an island in motel located in a dangerous section of the city.
Okay, it's good. Objective memo, right? That's what you're supposed to be writing. Anybody else? Oh, come on, it's not a secret.
Much simpler. I wrote, write a memo determining whether or not BVI breached a duty to Melody.
Okay,
I wrote to write a memo to determine if BV is an agent and breached their duty of care, thus being negligent PM.
okay. You say negligence there. One of the tasks that you have is to identify the duty of care. So I would not put that in my task statement. One of the tasks is, what is the duty of care? Anybody else? It's good.
I would ask if the fair objective office memorandum discussing the possible merits of whether BVI was, one, acting as an agent, two, what type of agent, three, if they breached duty, if they breached their duty,
So what was one,
if they were acting as the agent,
and what was two?
if so, what type of agent.
Okay, that's closer to what I wrote. Still not quite there. Here's what I wrote. This is my task set. Very simple, right? Did not spend a lot of time crafting the task statement. Write objective memo so I don't forget. There are 3 questions. I'm not going to write those down again. They're right there. Here are the 3 questions. Okay? No facts. It says leave out the statement of facts. So I'm making a note so I don't start typing statement of facts when I get down to it. That's my task statement. Very simple and to the point. I think it's got everything in there. At this stage, let's talk about this. Could you start writing this memo? The headings, you could, right? Could you write memorandum at the top of the page and then you know who it's to, right? Go ahead and write that it's to Dylan Massive from you, and that the date is whatever the date of the exam is, and that it's regarding potential claim against Boundless Vacations Inc., right? Get that out of the way, because that requires absolutely no thought. I would just go ahead and type that at the beginning and you've got it out of the way. Then I would type the headings for these 3 questions. What's the heading for this first question going to say? It's going to be 1. Yeah, I would say, was BVI an agent for Melly? And what type of agent? What's your heading for 2 going to be? Duty of care, or just duty of care, good. And what's going to be for 3? Breach of duty. That's simple. Put those into your document right now. Now you're going to remember that you have 3 distinct issues that you're supposed to address, and what those 3 issues are. Okay? So, how many of these do you think you're going to have?
3.
Probably going to have 3, 1 for each issue, assuming there are different rules that determine the answer to those issues, and there probably are. Good. So you're already starting to see the shape, the structure of what this is going to take, and there's no reason that you can't get this easy stuff typed in right at the beginning. So you're going to have 3 different sections. Now, Mr. Godwin, you had it divided up slightly differently, which maybe would be okay under other circumstances. But on these MPTs, if they give you 3 questions enumerated like that, well, you better have 3 sections enumerated just like that that talk about what they expect to see under those sections. It's the reader expectation test, right? Put yourself in the mindset of the grader. You volunteered to be a grader for the Texas bar exam, and they send you 100 MPT answers, and you've got a week to grade them all. And they send you 100 copies of the checklist. You're just going to be going through those as quickly as you can. And if you expect to see this stuff about what type of agent under the first heading, but the writer put it under the second heading instead, or has 4 headings instead of the 3 that you expected, then probably you're not going to give the writer all the points, even if they adequately covered all the topics, because it's just not what you expected to see. It's that reader expectation test coming back to haunt us again. So If they give you a specific set of questions, make sure you address those questions and in that order, because that's what the grader is going to expect to see.